Welcome back to the Bliss Podcast. I'm your host, Maitreya Rishi Dasa. I'm here with His Grace Parojya Prabhu of the Bhaktivedanta Lives in Sound Society. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, it's a great pleasure to be with you today here. Hari Bol.
Really? I don't know. I wouldn't think it was a great pleasure to be with me of all people, to be honest with you. But I appreciate it. So, calling all listeners who is here for the Yuga Dharma Sankirtana podcast. Put your hands wide in the sky. Were you here for that, Prabhu?
I was here, yes.
We need more viewers. I think. How many views did we get on the last podcast?
I have no idea.
Something.
I stopped following, but there's so many that it was overwhelming. I could not.
Okay.
There's so many viewers.
You don't want to become overwhelmed by the fame bija. So yeah, the 50 viewers we get is a little overwhelming. But I think we can do a little more. A little more can be done. You just share with one person, and then immediately double the views. Wow, such a big difference. So you just share with one friend.
I think the secret of our success is that we have to explain to our dear friends to not just share, but to tell others to share also.
Right. Teach a man to fish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very simple process. You put this link on your Facebook and you just post it on your timeline. That will be significant preaching. You will feel ecstatic doing this, I promise you. Krishna will be so pleased. So, on the last podcast we talked about... Oh, yes, Prabhu?
Let's get at least 100,000 viewers. Come on, let's go for it.
That's reasonable. Like, that's just a little, from 50 to 100,000 is a very small step. I think that this is highly plausible. Maybe even have a sound effect for this. It can be done with faith. So, if you weren't here on the Yuga Dharma Sankirtana podcast, we basically talked about what we're all meant to do in this current fallen age, and how nice the process of chanting the holy names is. So that was a pleasant podcast. Everyone can go and check that out. That'll be in the link down below, and also in the links down below you're going to find several other platforms for our social media. Everyone loves the social media. You can go on our Facebook or our Instagram or our website, which is of paramount importance. The website everyone must go. On the website you can find all kinds of nice things like Bliss ebooks, and you can find out about Bliss, and you can read articles, and it's very nice. And also you can find, it's kind of like the hub for finding the other social medias and our donation. Prabhu, maybe you could tell the viewers about our donations. Or lack thereof.
They're very nice. Donations are very, very nice.
Yeah. How can people donate?
They can donate through the GoFundMe, PayPal, or they can become our Patreons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so very nice. Yeah, the Patreon is, that's my personal favorite. Of course, because I'm currently serving in Bliss, I don't have to become a Patreon to be enabled for the rewards. Sorry to make you all jealous, but I get the ebooks for free, and I don't have to do anything, of course, because I have no money myself, so I couldn't do that anyway, even if I'd like to. But yeah, everyone becomes eligible for a free download of Parojya Prabhu's ebooks, which he nicely compiles from the teachings of Srila Prabhupada, or writes himself also, as in the history of atheism or proof of the Vedas. And these are very enlightening books. You can get deeper into the various aspects of the Krishna conscious philosophy. So if you're looking to become more advanced in Krishna consciousness, I recommend these books. And in other news, the Bliss news. Let's zoom on over to the Bliss news. I don't know if there is any Bliss news, but I just want to hear that sweet sound of the Bliss news. That particular sound. Anything comes to your mind, Prabhu, for the news of the bliss?
Well, our Maitreya Rishi, he hurt his foot
Ah.
today. Those are the bliss news. He went for a flower. He went to the search for a flower in the morning for the morning offering, and he came out with a bloody foot. So that's the bliss news. Now everything is okay because I told him to put a turmeric on it.
Yeah, that was a point of contention in the morning. I would say this is more specifically the unblissful news. It's not exactly so. It wasn't so blissful, at least when it happened. But yeah, Prabhu is a very expert medical man. He studies the Vedas, so he has all the knowledge. And he informed me that turmeric is very disinfectory. So that was very nice. If you get a cut, put some turmeric powder on it, and you're going to be cured right up. That's the Bliss Medical news and news.
Actually, it stops bleeding.
Ah.
Turmeric stops bleeding. So because we have no bandages, so we use the turmeric.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's all for the Bliss news. Maybe. Yes, Prabhu?
Then we are still searching for the painter for our book, Teachings of Lord Buddha from the Vedic Point of View. This is a new book that the Bliss is gonna publish soon. So if you know about some painter, actually we got some response, right?
Yes. We got some response from a kind girl called Alexandra Wuzik, who we had the great fortune of associating with in Brussels on our Euro trip, which is a trip where we go in a van, a mobile temple, all over the Europe, and we distribute Srila Prabhupada's books and mercy to people all across the world, in places like Amsterdam. Where else did we go there? Spain, France, some little towns in France, England also. We went to, and one of the places was Brussels. So Alexandra Wuzik, she was very kind, and she let us stay, so we didn't have to stay in the cold van in the getting close to the Brussels winter. And she happens to be an artist, so she's also very talented in this regard, and she's offered to do some at least some sketches and show us what she's got. So that's one candidate. Maybe you can mention the other candidate, Prabhu.
Another candidate is we are thinking of Srila Prabhupada's early disciple, Mother Janava. We are negotiating with her. Maybe she's gonna do it. We don't know. We're just waiting for the response. So and there's some others. I think Bhakta Mark also, he suggested something.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Bhakta Mark, for getting in touch with us. Due to our last question, it was very nice of you to reach out. So if anyone else has some suggestions, you can get in contact with us via our Facebook. That was very useful. In other Bliss news, I'm just going to merge this section with the Bliss news for convenience sake. In other Bliss news, thank you to our donors. We get consistent donors every month, and one particular Mataji has stood out this month, and that is Sabina. Sabina Mataji, she donated again. So thank you so much, Mataji. This is so helpful for the distribution of Srila Prabhupada's mercy and the continuation of various Bliss projects. So if anyone feeling generous, like we mentioned before, you can go down on the links below. So, aside from the Bliss news, aside from what happened on the previous podcast, we have today another podcast. And one of our longtime fans, Mr. Hali Prabhu, he sent us a question via the Facebook voice messaging system, which is very nice. Please continue to send voice messages. We want to hear all of your transcendental vanis. It's very pleasing to the ear. And so Harley sent us a voice messaging system, and I think we have that downloaded. Can we play that?
Okay, I do have a question about Lord Chaitanya. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, I thought he casted out someone for sexual misconduct or sex drive or something of that nature. and the guy was cast out, and he ended up killing himself because of the way he felt. And when it was told to Lord Chaitanya that that guy killed himself or took his own life, Lord Chaitanya said, "Good." Is that correct? Because I don't know. I thought I read that, but I might have read it wrong. So I was just asking to clarify it. Okay, I do have a question.
Okay, so all these names, Prabhu, Chota Haridas and
And I'm not asking that to be a jerk or anything like that. I'm just asking because that's what I thought I read. So I wish you all the best. Just hit me back up whenever you can. All right, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Sorry for interrupting you there.
He has a very nice voice,
Yeah.
kind of like a podcast person.
Yeah, very suitable for the podcast.
Yeah.
Come on board for a guest special, Harley. I don't know how we'd arrange for this kind of thing, but yeah, you have a very pleasing American accent. Are you from New York, or I feel like I hear some kind of New York tinge there. So yeah, very good. And regarding the question, all these names, Guru, what are they? Lord Chaitanya, Chota Haridas. What does it mean?
Lord Chaitanya is Krishna, the last incarnation of Krishna, last appearance. Krishna comes in various forms. So the last time Krishna appeared on the scene was in the form, merciful form of Lord Chaitanya. Krishna Varnam Trisha Krishna Sangopastra Parshadam Yagya Sankirtana Prayar Yajantihi Sumedasa. This is also stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna comes in a disguised form, effulgent yellow, golden complexion. Lord Chaitanya comes in golden because Krishna has a blue complexion, right? As you have seen on the picture, Krishna is always blue, but now he comes as Lord Chaitanya in a golden complexion, accompanied by his associates and confidential servitors and his weapons. Lord Chaitanya has various weapons, not necessarily the Sudarshan chakras, the discs that chop off the heads.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, but this time he comes with the weapon of Sankirtan, the holy name, chanting. It kills, but it kills the demonic mentality. It doesn't necessarily kill the person. So it's a very peaceful incarnation. Lord Chaitanya is not killing demoniac people, but is killing their demoniac mentality by his wonderful Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. We're chanting, we're dancing, and we eating nice Krishna prasadam. This is Hare Krishna movement.
Jai.
So Lord Chaitanya manifested his pastimes. They're very nicely described in the book called Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by another confidential associate of Lord Chaitanya, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. So there are various pastimes. When we say pastimes, it means various activities. Because when Krishna comes or his devotee comes to this world, all their activities are called the Leela. Leela is an activity that is a little different from our activities. Our activities are very much conditioned by the laws of material nature. Oh, I gotta get money. I gotta get a job. I have to pay my bills. I have to eat. I have to sleep. I have to go and have sex. I have, so many things. We're being pushed constantly by the material circumstances to do certain things. So when Krishna comes or his devotee comes, whatever they do is enacted by Krishna's spiritual potency. Whatever they do is to show us guidance, how to act in this world, but they themselves are not conditioned by the material laws. This is a very important aspect. If we want to understand Krishna's pastimes, we have to keep this in mind, that his pastimes are not enacted by Krishna's inferior energy. There are two energies of Krishna. Inferior, the Prakriti, what is that?
Apara Prakriti, no? that's Paraprakriti is the inferior.
Paraprakriti is the superior, and Aparaprakriti is inferior. So the inferior energy acts on the conditioned souls, just like we are, and the Paraprakriti acts on the liberated souls. So yeah, that's Lord Chaitanya. Now Chota Haridas was an associate of Lord Chaitanya, who was also a sannyasi. Sannyasi is the stage of renunciation. Just like we have different types of monks, there are those who are brahmacharis, they can marry. Sannyasis cannot marry. There's a difference. The two types of monks. Those who dedicate their life. In other words, they don't have a job, but they fully dedicate themselves to the preaching of Krishna's message in the world. These monks are needed, just like everyone has his job, right? So he has a full-time job. He works on a full-time job. So there are also devotees who have a full-time engagement of preaching this Krishna consciousness movement. So they're very much needed in this world because it requires a lot of time and energy to push on this movement in this age of hypocrisy and quarrel and conflicts and godlessness. So they're very much needed. So those who commit very seriously, even to the extent that they reject the very idea of getting married altogether, they make a vow that I will not marry until the rest of my life. They're called sannyasis. Srila Prabhupada was also sannyasi. So usually you take this sannyas order of life at the end of life, after the age of 50. One should give up his family life and start practicing renunciation. So usually it's the end of life. But Lord Chaitanya also, for preaching purposes, he would also give sannyas to others, to young devotees, and Srila Prabhupada also. So for the preaching purposes, sannyas is also given to young devotees. And so Chota Haridas was one of these young sannyasis, and at one point, so because they give this vow of not getting married, they must avoid very strictly female association. And practicing celibacy, we don't have in our society so much reference, especially the Western society, so much into sex life. So there is no school that is teaching celibacy. Maybe some Christian priests are there, some kind of a tradition is there, but very, very weak. And it's, I have, from my experience, I came to situations where people were wondering, like, why are you doing this? What is celibacy like? What is this thing all about? It's kind of very difficult to explain to people why you would refrain from sex life for the higher purpose of preaching Krishna consciousness. But in India, in the Vedic culture, this is a standard. This is a standard thing, and it is respected. People understand, okay, this person, he sacrificed his sense pleasure for a higher purpose, so they give honor to such people. But at the same time, that person must be serious. He can't play around. So, okay, coming back to the original point, celibacy is not so easy to follow. It requires a lot of determination, and especially because in the Western countries, because the culture is so much soaked with sex and sexual, how should I say this? Propaganda, yeah. Temptations everywhere. There's sex. When you do not practice, then you're not so much aware. But if you start practicing seriously, then okay, I will now not have any sex life, then all of a sudden you see, oh my God, there's everywhere there's temptation everywhere. So this might seem externally as fanaticism. Why you don't talk to women, or why you don't watch karmi, non-devotional movies, or why you don't listen to nice music, Beyonce or something like that. This might seem fanatical, but it actually, there is no other way. You must be very fanatical because the sex drive is so powerful. You know, a little inattention and you have a fall down. So those who are sannyasis, especially, they should be very careful not to fall down, because they made this vow, and then that creates disturbance in a society. You make some vow, and then you don't follow that vow, so people will develop a bad idea. Just like I mentioned, the Christian priests, right? Usually people, you know, they say that, oh, the Christians are hypocrites.
Right.
There's this pedophilia and so on, so on. So, of course, Christianity is wonderful. The message of Christianity, Lord Jesus Christ, is pure. There's no difference. It's also Vaishnavism. But because there's some misconduct, people will find an excuse not to not to worship God. Oh, these people who are into God, they are hypocrites, so God is nonsense. This very idea of God, it doesn't lead to anything. Sometimes they create these nonsense theories that, oh, because he was refraining, he became like a perverted rascal. So it is not healthy. They have also these theories that if you abstain from sex life, you can go crazy. So that's nonsense, complete nonsense. But because, yeah. So this Chota Haridas, he had a fall down. When we say a fall down, it means that a devotee is not able to follow these principles, and he has a misconduct, as Hari Prabhu said, is a misconduct. So what was actually Chota Haridas' misconduct? He was going to ask donations, just like we also ask donations. Not so much has changed since Lord Chaitanya came. And he visited this Mataji to ask some grain, some rice or something. And he just looked at her with some little tiny lust, some little remnants of lust. And because Lord Chaitanya is Krishna, he is also present in the heart. He couldn't understand immediately. You can't cheat Lord Chaitanya. So Lord Chaitanya immediately understood. There was nothing else. He didn't even talk to her. Just because he lustfully glanced at this Mataji, this woman, Lord Chaitanya rejected him, said, "You are a hypocrite. And, you know, I don't want to associate with you anymore." He rejected him. So, this is to show, Lord Chaitanya is showing the example that you can't play around, you know, with the ashramas, that especially the sannyas order is very serious, it should be taken seriously. So then Chota Haridas, yes, it's true, yeah, he took his own life. He couldn't bear the separation from Lord Chaitanya, so he took his own life. And Lord Chaitanya says, yes, that is, he has done the right thing, because he, So, anyway, this seems very strict, very cruel. But one should not make offenses to Lord Chaitanya. It is not that he's cruel, and this is also a lila. Chota Haridas later on, he came to Lord Chaitanya and he was chanting for him, right?
As a Gandharva, right? If I'm not mistaken, I also might be mistaken, don't take my word with a pinch of salt, but as far as I remember, he comes as like a Gandharva, which is like a higher planetary being, but I'm not entirely sure. You have to correct me.
I am not sure. Maybe we'll have to study that pastime more thoroughly. So So anyway, it's true. What Harley mentioned, it is true. We will not hide. It is true, this is just to keep the standard correct. Sometimes it must be very strict. Even Srila Prabhupada is very strict, because if he's lenient, then people take advantage of this. It is not that Chota Haridas was a demon or something, right? It is not like that. There's something called an accidental fall down. Sometimes devotees, they don't fall down because they want to fall down or because they're hypocrites, but simply because of the weakness. It is not easy. Prabhupada says that, practicing Krishna consciousness means declaring war against the illusory energy. So those who at least try, they're glorious. They're glorious. And those who do not try and they justify and so on and criticize, they become offenders. So we have to make discrimination. Sometimes the devotee falls down out of weakness, and sometimes the devotee falls down, well, he's not a devotee, out of envy. He says, why should I follow this? This is too strict. The spiritual master is a fool. He doesn't know how to instruct us. So he disobeys, or he falls down out of this envious mentality. So that will not be excused by Krishna. But someone who is not able to follow due to weakness or due to previous bad habits, he is excused by Krishna. And again, he becomes corrected, and he again comes back, and he follows after some time. So his path is safe, and we should be very careful when we criticize devotees. We should not imitate Lord Chaitanya. So this is one point I would like to mention. And another point in regards to this transcendental pastime of Lord Chaitanya with Chota Haridas is that Srila Prabhupada, as the representative of Lord Chaitanya, told us that this instruction that one should commit suicide if he is in the sannyas order of life, and if he has a fall down, does not have to be followed in our age. Prabhupada says this is not necessary, because nowadays it is very difficult to follow. So those who follow, they're glorious. Those who cannot follow the sannyas order, they should become householders and continue their preaching, because if everyone kills himself, then there's no Hare Krishna movement left. People are very fallen. It is not so easy. So we have to be reasonable. And of course, this injunction, this is actually Vedic injunction that sannyasi should commit suicide if he's not able to follow his vows. This is also scientific. It is because there is a sinful reaction for this. So if he kills himself, then he purifies this sinful reaction. Another example of this is when someone is when there is a murderer in the Manu Samhita. It is specially recommended that the government should execute that person. There should be a death penalty, because that person who murders, if the government executes him, he becomes purified from this great sin. So he again takes his birth as a human, and he can continue his Krishna consciousness. His development. So this we have to keep in mind, that the Vedas, they take into consideration your future life. We're very much in the Western country. We think that YOLO, this YOLO, this life is all that is. So if someone commits suicide, that's it. Or if he dies, that's it. No more sense gratification. No, there's future life, and the Vedic injunctions take into consideration our future life. Whether we're going to hell, whether we're going to take a body of an animal, whether we're going to be elevated to the heavenly planets, or whether we're going to go back to God. It is all taking into account. So a sannyasi who takes his life, he's purified from this. And then he can continue his development in his next life. Whereas if he goes on as a hypocrite, then he will be degraded. Anyway, so in this age, Srila Prabhupada says it's not necessary. You simply chant Hare Krishna, and Krishna will excuse. Now if some people will commit suicide, this is not our Hare Krishna movement, that people should kill themselves. And It is not like that. So we have to be careful when we are studying these pastimes. We should be intelligent and understand these pastimes from Srila Prabhupada, and take his guidance on things. Not do things out of passion without any brain. So it says in the Bhagavatam, Yajanti hi sumedasa, those who have sufficient brain substance, those who are intelligent, they will take up this movement of Lord Chaitanya, not foolish people who are sentimental, who are misguided, who are maybe depressed and they make a wrong decision. No, those should not be they should not be encouraged in such nonsense. So yeah.
Yeah, well, now that you just mentioned this last point, now I feel I don't want to make offenses, but for clarity, the pastime I just want to mention in this connection is it's a little different, I think, circumstantially. That we have an example actually of where this understanding of this Leela went wrong during Srila Prabhupada's physical presence. And it happened to a great sannyasi of the Hare Krishna movement, a very excellent devotee, Vishnujan Maharaj. But it should be understood right from the beginning that this instance is different. When we say that obviously that foolish people, shouldn't be sentimental. That it's not that Vishnujan was foolish or sentimental. Also, he shouldn't make apparats in this regard, but. Because no one had inquired, as far as I know, about this pastime. Or
you should explain what happened, because people don't know Vishnu Jana.
Of course, yeah. But just as a little precursor, that this is kind of like the first instance, I don't know, of this pastime being explained. So there was no previous Prabhupada had given this, that we don't have to follow this. Anyway, so Vishnujan Maharaj, before we get into anything, is a very inspiring devotee. Anyone who's practicing Krishna consciousness is familiar with the name Vishnujan Maharaj. Why? Because he was basically like, apart from Srila Prabhupada and many other prominent devotees also, but he was like an emblem of the Sankirtan movement. He was really like many devotees who were with him while he was physically present, describe him as a divine personality. And you can find footage of Vishnujan Maharaj online on YouTube and stuff like this, and you'll find that he would go out, and he's described like this also, many eyewitness, that he would go out onto the streets while the devotees were doing Harinam Sankirtan, going out onto the streets with the drums and the cymbals and dancing and chanting in the street. He would lead these big parties of devotees, and he would be out there chanting for 10 hours at a time, 8-10 hours at a time. Like, I mean, I personally, I can't imagine, I play Mridanga a little bit, practice for an hour, and my fingers start splitting, and it's kind of painful. But, Vishnujan Maharaj would play for 10 hours, and his hands would be bleeding after 3 or 4 hours, and he would go on like that. This is the pleasure potency of the holy name is so ecstatic that you can just go on like this. And so Vishnujan is exemplary, and he would really he would stun and awe and inspire people, and he would bring people back to the temples, and like this, very inspiring. He would have these famous gloves also that were equipped with tiles, so he could wear the gloves, protect his hands for a little while longer, and also make the sound on the drum with the tiles. He was very, I would say there's a high level of consciousness, very Krishna conscious. And he would always be talking about Krishna, many realizations about Krishna consciousness, and a very avid preacher like this. So yeah, as a sannyasi, he started many temples also by himself. There are many pastimes you can find of Vishnujan Maharaj. So yes, him and Srila Prabhupada had a very thick and thin relationship. He was very devoted to Srila Prabhupada, and there's many devotees who also describe when they would see Vishnujan and Prabhupada meeting or talking. It was very intimate. Vishnujan's eyes would get very big, and he'd be very ecstatic to see Srila Prabhupada and serve his mission. He barely would be sleeping and like this. So, being very devoted, then there was some instance where he just is similar to Chota Haridas, where he was simply talking to a woman that he was previously associated with, and because he was very serious, then he felt that he felt guilty about this association, and he asked Srila Prabhupada about the Chota Haridas pastime, that is it proper for a sannyasi to kill himself? And Prabhupada says yes, it is possible. And in fact, actually, we have the conversation here, so maybe I can read the conversation. So Vishnujan Maharaj says, Srila Prabhupada, how did Chota Haridas achieve perfection by killing himself after apparently pouring water on his devotional creeper by talking to a woman? Prabhupada, his instance was even that an associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can fall down, and if one falls down, his punishment is that suicide. There is no punishment, no other punishment. He must commit suicide. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instruction. Otherwise, he is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's personal servant. He cannot fall down. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed this instance that even one is my personal servant, he can fall down. And if anyone, by any cause, he falls down, his punishment is he must commit suicide. This is instruction. Tamal Krishna says, very strict. Prabhupada, oh yes, you have fallen down, you must commit suicide. No more my association. Bhujda Krishna says, is that the same as in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, for one who is honored, dishonor is worse than death? Prabhupada, yes, that is another thing. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally taught this. To be victimized by Maya is possible. There is a possibility, just like Jai and Vijay. They were gatekeepers in Vaikunta. They also fell down, Hiranyakashipu. So this fall down, there is possibility in any moment because we are all very small. We can be captivated by Maya at any moment. Therefore, we should be very, very careful. And if you fall down, then punishment is that you have to make suicide. That's all. Then, next life we shall see. Satsuru. But Srila Prabhupada, in the Nectar of Devotion, it says devotional service is so pure that there's no prayashita necessary. Just again engage in your service. Prabhupada, yes, this is not prayashita. This is exemplary punishment. He was not liable to be punished, but they played that this should be done. Guru Kripa. He did not kill himself immediately. He waited for a year. Prabhupada. He was waiting if Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would accept him again. But when he saw that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not so lenient, he committed suicide. Vajrad api katora. Harder than the thunderbolt and softer than the rose. This is the position. Tamal Krishna. But Prabhupada, if you were as strict as if you were that strict, Prabhupada, no, I am not Chaitanya Prabhu. I am not, why are you comparing me? I am an ordinary man. Very bewildering. Guru Kripa says, so in ISKCON, if someone falls down, it means that he should commit suicide? Prabhupada, no. Gurudas, we wouldn't have much of a movement then. So that's the end of the conversation. So it's very similar also to what you were mentioning.
I have another contribution here. There's a devotee, Gauridas Pandit Prabhu. He's a nice devotee. He's also on Facebook. You can add him. He was a personal servant of Srila Prabhupada in these days. So he has a memory that I can read you about what happened after Vishnujan drowned himself. He says, Gauridas Pandit says, Tamal, that's another devotee, mentioned to Prabhupada that devotees had been investigating Vishnujana's whereabouts. They had his passport. He couldn't have left India without it, and he didn't apply for a new one. So some brahmanas came to the Delhi temple and said that a white sannyasi in Prayag, the place where Chota Haridas committed suicide, had paid them to take him on a boat and to chant mantras so that he wouldn't take a ghost body. They said that this person had tied rocks to himself and jumped off the boat. When the devotees put all the pieces together, they realized that that must have been Vishnujan. Tamal said, we think that he committed suicide. Prabhupada began to cry. He said, Vishnujan didn't have to do that. Tamal asked, Prabhupada, do you know where Vishnujan is? Prabhupada said, He is very advanced. He is still chanting Hare Krishna. About 2 weeks later, Prabhupada woke up one morning and said that Vishnujan had been chanting to him. Similarly, after Chota Haridas committed suicide, Lord Chaitanya had heard Chota Haridas chanting. End of memory. So, yes, this Vishnujan Maharaj, very, very unfortunate how, we lost him. Very serious also. He paid some brahmanas in India to chant some mantras, and he basically tied rocks with ropes to his body, and he jumped off to this Ganges water. So this is how he committed suicide. It is very scary and very sad because Vishnujan was amazing personality, amazing devotee. So usually when people commit suicide, they attain a ghost body as a punishment. But Prabhupada here explains that, well, not here, but in another instance, they were asking, does he have a ghost body? And Prabhupada says, no, this is an exception. Krishna will excuse. So anyway, so Vishnujan did it. You do not do it. Don't commit suicide. Whatever things are happening, fall downs, or many devotees who had to fall down. So it's not the end of the world. The most important that we keep on engaging in whichever way we can. Not commit suicide. This is not the way. Okay, just to make it very clear that we don't support this. We're not telling people that you should commit suicide.
Okay, so very interesting memory. There's also another purport in the Srimad Bhagavatam which confirms that we shouldn't. We shouldn't kill ourselves. We should take it seriously, but not so harshly. That's what I was meant to say. So Prabhupada says in the purports to the Srimad Bhagavatam 8.2.31, in the fighting between the elephant and the crocodile, this is referring to Gajendra and who's the other? Okay. The difference was that although the elephant was extremely powerful, he was in a foreign place, in the water. During 1,000 years of fighting, he could not get any food, and under the circumstances his bodily strength diminished. And because his bodily strength diminished, his mind also became weak and his senses less powerful. The crocodile, however, being an animal of the water, had no difficulties. He was getting food and was therefore getting mental strength and sensual encouragement. Thus, while the elephant became reduced in strength, the crocodile became more and more powerful. Now, from this we may take the lesson that in our fight with Maya, we should not be in a position in which our strength, enthusiasm, and senses will be unable to fight vigorously. Our Krishna consciousness movement has actually declared war against the illusory energy, in which all the living entities are rotting in a false understanding of civilization. The soldiers in this Krishna consciousness movement must always possess physical strength, enthusiasm, and sensual power. To keep themselves fit, they must therefore place themselves in a normal condition of life. What constitutes a normal condition will not be the same for everyone, and therefore there are divisions of Varnashram, Brahmana, Vanashram. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprast, and Sannyas. Especially in this age, Kali Yuga, it is advised that no one take sannyas. Ashwamedam Galabam, Sannyasam Palapartikam, Divarena Sutapatim Kalupancha Virajayat. From this we can understand that in this age the sannyas ashram is forbidden because people are not strong. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed us an example in taking sannyas at the age of 24 years, but even Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya advised Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be extremely careful because he had taken sannyas at an early age. For preaching, we give young boys sannyas, but actually it is being experienced that they are not fit for sannyas. There is no harm, however, if one thinks that he is unfit for sannyas, and if he is very much agitated sexually, he should go to the ashram where sex is allowed, namely the Grihastha ashram. That one has been found to be very weak in one place does not mean that he should stop fighting the crocodile of Maya. one should take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, as we shall see Gajendra do, and at the same time one can be a grahasta if he is satisfied with sexual indulgence. There is no need to give up the fight. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore recommended Stani Stitag Stuti Gatam Tanu Va Manubi. One may stay in whichever ashram is suitable for him. It is not essential that one take sannyas. If one is sexually agitated, he can enter the Grahasta ashram, but one must continue fighting. For one who is not in a transcendental position, to take sannyas artificially is not a very great credit. If sannyas is not suitable, one may enter the Grahasta ashram and fight Maya with great strength, but one should not give up the fighting and go away. Very interesting. So the point is to remain Krishna conscious, be attached to the service of Krishna, and not to these, which these are essentially, not essentially, they are material designations, sannyas ashram, brahmachari ashram, grahasta ashram. These are just for the material side of things. The main point is to be Krishna conscious. So it's not that we become attached to these things, we should become attached to the lotus feet of Krishna, as Srila Prabhupada says. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Gaurani Sai, Gaurani Sai, Gaurani Sai, Jaya Gaurani Sai. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Gauri Sai Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Sai Gaura Premanande. So I think that's about all for the Bliss podcast on this week. We thank you all for joining us, and we invite you to come back for the next time. Please leave your comments down in the comment section down below. What you'd like us to talk about, any questions, queries, challenges, suggestions like that. And get in contact with us via our various social medias, become a Patreon, become a GoFundMe person, and chant Hare Krishna and read Srila Prabhupada's books. Any closing comments, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai! All glories to Vishnu Jan.